Municipality Member of Parliament, the Honorable Asuman Basalirwa, did propose on the floor of Parliament the Anti-Homosexuality Act. It was debated and passed by Parliament of Uganda this particular year. It was further assented to by the President, and it only awaits gazetting for it to become actual law in Uganda. The passing of this particular act has been met with mixed feelings by the population, with law dons and human rights activists who have already filed a constitutional petition before the courts of law seeking analysis of either certain provisions or the law in its entirety. Well, there are also geopolitical implications to this particular bill. You know the statements of the USA President regarding sanctions against our Speaker of Parliament, among other issues around our funding and much more. So to put all this into perspective this afternoon is a panel of our distinguished citizens that it's now my honor to introduce to you, our viewers. And in no particular order, the only lady on the show this afternoon is Dr. Sarah Birete. The doctor is a regular on this show, and she is the executive director of CCG, Center for Constitutional Governance, here in Uganda. Doctor,
thank you very much, and good afternoon, viewers. Viewers, I am endangered species on this panel.
I call it a manner. I call it a manner.
You're on the brink of extinction.
Why is so, doctor?
Because you said unrelated.
Who is preying on you? Who is preying on you?
Well, yeah, that's on a lighter note.
Given the topic, maybe there are more ladies.
Hey.
You know, now with this he, she,
Hey.
you know,
Hey.
they, them.
Hey.
Maybe there are more than one.
Well, as you can see, my hand is being forced already into the conversation. Well, for now, I'm still doing introductions. The second panelist on the show is Counsel Aaron Kiza, who is a lawyer, and he's also a regular on this show. Counsel, we are very happy to have you.
It is my delight to be part of this show, and I can assure you no one is preying on me, so I'm not about to extinct, but I'm about to flourish.
Very interesting.
That's nice.
Next to myself is our guest this afternoon, Dr. Squared. He is both a medical doctor, but also holds a PhD. So I guess he's a Dr. Squared. Dr. Ekwaru Obuku, former president of Uganda Medical Associations. Doctor, thank you for sparing the time.
Thank you too. I'm happy to be in this show for the second time, and we call it MD PhD. MD PhD, not Dr. Square.
Interesting.
But MD PhD in America, we do MBCHD, very long British.
Yeah.
But we abbreviate and say MD PhD.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Counsel Kiza, let me just begin with you. Just your own perception about this particular law. What do you make of it?
It's going to exclude many Ugandans from services, ordinary services. You can forget about the talk of legalese, constitutional petitions. You're talking about ordinary human beings who want to walk into a medical center, to our good doctor here, and be attended to without being subjected to searching, scrutiny, suspicion, and so on and so forth. Sometimes it is hard enough to make a decision to approach a doctor, even in the best of circumstances. It is going to be harder for people to feel that they have to be confident to approach medical professionals if they are LGBTQ+. But even if they made the decision, once they reach medical centers, some medical doctors who are owing to religious fanaticism or some other, or because of the law, thinking the law obligates them to do so, might harass them actually. Walking into a medical center, walking into a school, walking into any public place with this law could make you a criminal in a flash of a second, because someone can suspect you that you are a homosexual, and the police will have a say to swing into action. So the biggest thing is exclusion from social services, exclusion from legal protection. People will not even be free to attend churches, because if you're going to attend a church and you dress in a way, there are people we call sisters or tomboys, or one unto them with this kind of law, because that can attract the police, and with police, the DPP and prisons and all manner of people really peering into your privacy, searching your body, and so on and so forth. So it is a law that is going to make a section of Ugandans be denied basic services, be denied their dignity, and even before it was promulgated, even before it was assented to by the president, the law had already had an effect. I know people who have fled Uganda because of this law, even before it was assented. So we are creating more exiles. In addition to the political exiles, now you have sexual exiles. So it's a bad law in one sentence. And it is one that I hope the judiciary can look beyond the political populism of the law's sponsors and the politicians that assented to it, including the gang in Chankwanzi, and annul it.
Doctor, your own thoughts?
Well, it's unfortunate when lawmakers enact laws using emotions. The emotional display has no place in legal drafting and legal making and purpose of the law. With all due respect to the Christians and moral crusaders, including the whole, homophobic demonstration in the country, lawmaking requires some bit of sobriety and due diligence and all the other things that were not done, including public participation, which is required by law. According to the rules of Parliament, a law is supposed to take up to 45 days at committee stage, hoping that that is sufficient time for all stakeholders to engage with the committee and share their views and perspectives, but also the committee to do enough research on the purpose of the law and possible effectiveness, including implications on socio-economic and political aspects of citizens' lives. So 6 days, was it sufficient time to make a good law? The purpose notwithstanding. Let's assume that there was necessity and purpose that required us to make a law. Was the time sufficient? Look at a range of provisions of the Constitution that were violated, and I will talk about the legal bit because that's where most of my advocacy is. Look at Article 2 of the Constitution, which makes the Constitution supreme and requires that all values, morals, whatever customs, so long as they do not meet the constitutional standard, they are null and void to the extent of the inconsistency. And then you sit to legislate for moral emotions. That should have been the first article to take care of. And how does the intention meet the constitutional standard? Then you go to the national objectives and directives of state policy, where the need for citizen participation is required. And it was emphasized by both the Constitutional Court and Supreme Court in the age limit case, the need for public participation. Then you come to the Bill of Rights, because you are touching on a matter, subject matter of human rights. Then you come to the Bill of Rights, Article 20, 21, 23, 26, 27, 29, association. All these articles, there's a high possibility that the law violates half of the Bill of Rights. You look at the discrimination. You look at, I know over time, since our former chief legal drafter, the professor from Nigeria, from the time he retired, we have been having the bad quality of laws in this country. I don't even know who the current chief legal drafter is. So these are issues that then the committee would mandate the drafting team at Parliament to make sure that all provisions of the law they are seeking to make is in conformity with the provisions of the Constitution, because that's our standard. And like I've said somewhere this morning, you know, I'm good. I'm happy that people have gone to court. Some people have, America cannot tell us what to do. America cannot tell us how to live our lives. So the law is not being checked against the American Constitution. No, it's being checked against our own standard, which is the Ugandan Constitution. And I hope then the rhetoric of America, Europe, what, then will end. Because we are not petitioning. People are not petitioning this law in European Court of Human Rights. They are challenging it in our constitutional court. And it's my contention that it does not meet the standard. Then it comes to the conduct of the Speaker or the presiding office of the House. Article 89, Clause 2 is very clear in demanding neutrality of the person presiding over the House. It states that the presiding officer shall not have an original or casting vote during the process of legal making or in the process of presiding over the House. The Speaker announced in the morning, we are going to enact a law. We are going to return this law. The video went viral. In the afternoon, leave was granted to Honorable Vasarira to introduce the law. So who is the move of this law? Is it Vasarira or it's Anita Mung? And I'm glad that that question is before court. Then you go to Article 92, which prohibits retrogressive legislation if courts have pronounced themselves on a matter. Parliament is prohibited from seeking to reenact matters where courts have pronounced themselves. And we have 3 court decisions on homosexuality issues in this country. 2 by High Court, 1 by Constitutional Court. So what is the duty of Parliament?
But Doctor, because you're bringing in an aspect of what the lawyers would call res judicature. But the Professor Olokonyango case, it was, I don't know if the merits of the case were heard. It was thrown out on preliminary objection that the process through which the law was enacted did not follow procedure.
Yeah, have you read the full judgment?
There was no quorum, there was no... So
it was nullified on quorum, but have you read the full judgment?
Not really.
Yeah. So that's so, and we have other cases of Kesha, and the Rolling Stone newspaper.
Because
there are other cases.
We use the highest appellant court.
No. The matters are different. The matters are
okay,
different that have been litigated upon. So you have these pronouncements from courts, and the government has not really over time succeeded to prove, regardless of the anti-homosexuality rhetoric. So as I conclude, because basically this was my introduction, as I conclude, I think that we need to distinguish between a social crisis and a legal agenda. Because you cannot use a law to address a social crisis,
so
even if that crisis exists.
So what's your social position? What's your social and moral position about homosexuality? Besides the legal perspective which you've ably put out, what is your social and your moral perspective?
I don't know what you're specifically asking.
Well, you did mention, actually, in your opening remarks, that the moral crusaders...
No, because of the way the bill started. The bill started with a demonstration of Muslim clerics. Then we had all those concerns by the clergy. And the issue that they were raising was moral.
Even the Church of Uganda is on record. I think even yesterday they were supposed to do a gratitude.
Yes.
Press statement. But the moral thing is about love and tolerance and so on.
Yes.
You're not supposed to, even by Christian standards, this kind of homophobia has no place in true Christianity. Because you're supposed to love all people, even if they are bad, by the way. Jesus himself loved sinners. He called Zacchaeus from where he was climbing, and the people around him were saying, "Oh, how can you associate with a tax what? A tax collector?" So even if you thought there was a problem with homosexuals, is that the Christian attitude towards people you have a problem with.
Actually, the Christian attitude is rehabilitation of souls.
Mm.
Yes, if you think somebody's out of the line, you should reach out and try to rehabilitate them.
Who are you to judge these people as unworthy of government services, as unworthy of protection, as outfits? Yeah.
Or unworthy of a right to life, where you enact laws with a death sentence.
Okay, let us get a medical perspective.
Too many lawyers talking acts
These lawyers, yeah.
and articles.
Yes, yes, doctor, what's
And
your
even the
own
Bible,
perspective?
quoting the Bible now, the lawyers are becoming preachers.
Yes, doctor, what's your own perspective? More so the
So,
legal.
Sorry,
the medical. rather.
you know, much as it's medical, there's what called the medico-legal aspects of it, or ethics and professionalism. In my view, they are, by the way, first of all, this is a historical moment for me, because 10 years ago, I had to write a paper on the same. I was in my PhD class in Canada doing health policy and how decisions are made, and this was a case study.
Okay.
So 10 years down the road, seeing the same thing. That was in 2013, 2014 winter. And then 2023, we are seeing the same thing. In summary, my observation from the policy sciences perspective is it will end up in the same way. We're just going through the motions.
What do you mean it will be outlawed?
It is going to go into the fridge
Okay.
again. But so the question is it legal? Is it legitimate?
Yes.
Something can be legitimate, but legally it does not hold water. Because legitimate, then it comes from the population, isn't it? They are the ones who have demanded for it. And these studies have been done to show that Uganda is one of the countries that is most homophobic. There's a Pew Research survey, I think you have seen it, 2013. 96% of Ugandans said no to homosexuality. But Obuku here has friends who are homosexuals. Very good, decent human beings. They're actually professional medical doctors. Some of the most active, in fact, I want them to be in the association.
And
they make the association look good.
They are not, but they are not open about it.
No, there's one who was open about it. We actually took pictures. I didn't know. He was very active. The association, so when I visited South Africa, and that's why I can name the country, he said, look, you know me, I'm a homosexual. And he was with his boyfriend from, Zimbabwe. We went out, had a very good time, normally. So for me, that interaction enlightened me. That one of my strongest vanguards in the association was a homosexual. Okay? And I did not, actually, I valued him more than some who may be heterosexual, but they are not supporting the association and its activities and its ideals. So that was really my preamble. Otherwise, I just wanted to dispel some of the perceptions from Council Kiza. This thing here is the smartest political move by a seasoned politician. We shouldn't crack our heads as scholars to look at it from a legal lens or necessarily a lens of human rights lens. It's a political decision that is very smart. And I will justify why. If you look at the quick surveys, you'll find countries which are Muslim, countries in sub-Saharan Africa, countries in Eastern Europe, countries in East Asia, they don't support homosexuality. Even America, it is a global divide. 40% do not.
Okay.
But 60% say. So it depends on who is in government. You will recall that the bill had died. Yeah? When the Democrats were in office. But now, sorry, when the
Republican.
Trump,
maybe by Obama when he was in office, because he's like Biden. It is Trump being ultra conservative and Republican who is pro the.
Who is pro? Okay. But in Kampala here, you imagine 96% of Ugandans are agreeing on one thing.
Homosexuality.
In a question, in a situation, a context where we are having killings you cannot explain, at least in public, there is no report. It is a post-COVID economy. those issues you're talking about, human rights and torture. And then there's a third one I'd written, there's a succession talk. It was building a momentum.
Yes.
You know, MK project and so on. And, you know, when things settle, then people begin to think about these things. So no politician would waste this capital.
They want capitalism.
No politician
Because
would
of
waste
the
this.
numbers.
It is politically unsmart
Yeah, to oppose it.
to not assent to this law. As you can see, it was even, how many times do you see the opposition coming up with a law which is taken up by them and there is agreement? You must appear. You know, the house was full. But you put up a bill to say we must stop the deaths of mothers from preventable illnesses such as overbleeding because there is no blood. The government of Uganda cut 4 billion shillings, or about $1.5 million from the budget of blood transfusion services. The intern doctors have not been paid. Isn't it? They have not admitted intern. This is the government of Uganda. So this law here is timely to unite, first of all, the public, and you make political capital out of it. Perhaps what I would like to dispel from you quickly is, by the way, why I say it's politically smart. If you look back from policy sciences, you know, we call something called path dependence. History matters. How decisions were made before will affect how decisions are made today. And the example they keep giving is the computer keyboard. There's something they call QWERTY. All computers have QWERTY. QWERTY. They all have QWERTY, whether it is Dell, whether it is IBM, whether it is, because they realize that the way human being types, you need to do that, you need to leave those together. So path dependence, future computers are like that. Now here, as soon as the president assented in 2014, the current Minister of Health, Honorable Ruth Acheng, was the Director General. She released guidelines on how to treat, national guidelines for medical workers on how to treat
Were they
homosexuals.
Were they exclusive?
No, let me come. I'm coming to that. And I will tell you the principles
know
of
about
those
that.
guidelines. They are there.
Okay.
And the guidelines, in many ways, contradict the law. So me, I think this is a political thing. Let us make the law and address the public, isn't it? The interests of the public. But also let us issue guidelines and address the interests of LGBTQI who need services. I can tell you some of the principles here: non-discrimination, confidential. I just read it. It's
The
there,
guidelines.
and Minister of Health has never withdrawn. So I'm even wondering why Minister of Health is quiet. Mr. Eneviona should come out and tell people, by the way, we have this. That is why I'm very confident America is not going to withdraw even a single shilling. Because the doctors in the system, the people who run PEPFAR are doctors, Eric Gooseby and the current guys. The people who run the programs, they are doctors. Among doctors, the only contradiction we have perhaps is scientific. Is it genetic or not? But in terms of service delivery, there are robust programs here being funded in millions of dollars, targeting what we call key populations. And you will be surprised. I've got a senior colleague, a technical advisor in a program in Lango region, my home area, and was telling me, you will not believe that in Lira, when they tried to identify, to create special interventions for that population, the response was overwhelming.
Let me ask briefly, what percentage would you estimate the data for key populations in Uganda? I'm saying estimate.
Perhaps over 10%,
Really?
perhaps even up to 30%.
Really?
Yes, perhaps over 10%, but perhaps even up to 30%.
Okay.
Perhaps.
Okay.
I
it's
don't
an
know.
estimate.
You know, and then it should be varying naturally by age.
By
Towards the younger generation, it may increase. The proportion increases.
and spread countrywide?
It's definitely spread country because the people in the north are naturally conservative.
Yes.
But it was, so you can imagine, it was quite reasonable. They said they got numbers, very important numbers. You know, as the epidemic peaks, it becomes very difficult when it stabilizes, it's very difficult to get that deep. So you've got to reach those high-risk populations, and therefore the key populations were defined and interventions made for them.
Yes.
In 2005, when I was prescribing ARVs here in Korolo, we only had the bourgeoisies driving Prados like you and him coming.
For as key population.
No, not as key population, as a target, because there was nothing at that time. Only those who could access were getting. Now it reached a point around 2010 to 2015 where now we had really reached 1 million people on ARVs and so on, and now key populations were defined. But I wanted to bring this back to the medical legal aspect. We have 4 principles in the medical ethics, including research. One of them is called respect for persons. Respect for persons, and that's where non-discrimination. That's where Ministry has pulled out the non-discrimination pillar. The other one is called, and also of course autonomy falls there. The other one is called first do no harm. Even as we have those terms, like you have in law. Economy says ceteris paribus, you people say I don't know what, sub judice. For us we say primum non nocere. First do no harm. Isn't it? Non-maleficence. Then the third one is beneficence. And the fourth one is justice. So all these principles have been embedded in that guideline. And I can tell you, there is no doctor that I'm aware of practicing professionally, according to the Medical and Dental Practitioners Code of Conduct of Uganda, under the Act of 1998, who is going to deny services to a homosexual. I'm confident about the doctors in that respect. Okay? In that respect. Perhaps there are legal issues to do with the obligation to report. I've heard about that. The obligation to report and so on. That is very positive when it comes to things like rape and the defilement.
Just before you leave the medical point, for my benefit as well, is that what's the biological perspective? Can someone be born with hormones that are perhaps contradicting? That you appear like a man, but when you have certain hormones that make you feel like a woman, I don't know. Is there a genuine biological research that justifies that someone is born male, but then they're attracted towards?
Yes, those ones are there, depending on so typically XX would be female genes, isn't it? Then XY would be male. Then there are those which are in between. There's something called Klinefelter syndrome. There are people who are born with both organs. But that is not really the question here. The question here is, you are born, what we would say, no, those ones are considered the abnormal or variants. And some can be corrected, some may not be corrected. But the thing in the question is what people would say you are born normally. For example, male sexual organ properly, your genetic makeup is XY. And you just like fellow XY. I think that's what is in question in this law. And that question was presented to scientists. So initially, before 1973, or the early 70s, there was consensus that it's a mental illness. Okay?
Homosexuality.
Yes. Okay? And it was even classified in something called DSM-4, I think, or DSM-3. I need to get the full meaning, but I know what called ICD, International Classification of Diseases, but DSM, I've forgotten what it stands for. But I think I'll find out maybe over the break. But there was lots of pressure from the Americans. American Psychiatric Association, I think, and American Psychologist Association, and they removed it from the books. So it was no longer considered a disease. And see, here we follow what is agreed there. We adopt or adapt. Now, what I want to tell you is that the scientific question has never been settled. Science also is political. The interpretation of it is also a political question. It generates discussion. And according to the report I read, because I went back and read the 2013 report presented by scientists from Makerere University, they said that homosexuality has no scientific basis, there is no genetic link, and so on and so forth, and that it is, in fact, It's a behavioral thing. And it was actually presented in Chankwanzi. It was presented in Chankwanzi. So from the medical perspective, I would say, I think what is most important is no longer the question of whether it is a mental illness or it is genetically, it's a genetic, so it has a genetic basis. I think the most important question is what Kiza asked is what happens if you identify yourself as LGBTQ. Will you access services? I want to take him back to the constitution, that the Ugandans, the good thing, Ugandans, doctors respect the constitution so much, okay? Where the government of Uganda is supposed to provide free health care to the extent possible. The quality of it is debatable, but they will be able to access services. I do not see anyone who will stop them. There are even special programs for them, for those who are HIV positive. And even in practice, it's very difficult to know, actually. There are no clear signs, and there are no clear signs, actually, which define someone who is a homosexual, except if there are complications. Except if there are
I
complications.
just have two questions for Doctor. One is on the specifically the key populations. Before the HIV approach, identified the key populations who have a very high prevalent rate of HIV compared to the rest of the population. There were issues of fear for disclosure because of the homophobia in the country. Don't you think that then this law will worsen the progress that we have made as a country in HIV interventions for the key populations based on fear to be identified as such?
I think not. I think not. On paper, yes. But in practice, you know how laws are enforced in Uganda and how they're implemented. It's too complicated to implement. That's what I can say. It's too complicated, too many moving parts. Too many moving parts. There is the doctor, there is the patient, there is the policeman. Policeman who can't even arrest a proper thief in the village. I mean, look at our setups, where we are. Namugongo, where you are in charge of your security. Isn't it? You are I was the chairman.
But when you come to a health center...
as a chairman in a health facility, there you were fueling the motorcycle, repairing the motorcycle, feeding the police, you know, in Chitifumba, just here. And we are not talking about Loro City, where I come from. We're talking about here in Metropolitan, KMP, where the per capita is.
You are in charge of police.
You are in charge of supporting the police. You supplement the budget. Isn't it? Now, who told you that when you go to Bulago, it's not the same? So the challenges in that context are so many that for you to try to identify homosexuals is not a priority.
Thank you.
If you are in a casualty, border accident has happened, you are there fixing bones. Your blood is not there. Are you going to start thinking about the homosexual as a car? So in practice, me, I see the implementation of
becomes a bit difficult.
Of it in it will not happen. Yeah. So that's why I said it's politically smart, and I'm very sure. I listen to the president carefully because it's very important in these policy sciences to listen to the principle, because presidential utterances influence policy. When I heard him, you know, in chemistry we used to say there were general rules, but with exceptions. When I heard Mr. Museveni giving the exceptions in his recent speeches in the last 3 days, in effect, I became more convinced that the thing will not be implemented. It's just being smart.
What were his exceptions?
His exceptions were that he said, if you are a homosexual and we know you're homosexual, we will do nothing in the law. We will just try to rehabilitate you. You're getting me? Meaning you can access health services. If you promote, we will take you to jail. Now you tell me how many homosexuals are going to be promoting. I don't think it has even been, you know, it's not as popular. I mean, we see it on social media, but in reality, have you come across any? So it's popular on WhatsApp. You see the messages, but in reality, have you come across any party? that is around there? Me, I haven't. Then he said, but if you rape, we'll kill you. Now, the rape is also happening across the board, isn't it? And they are also subject to severe punishment. So when I assessed those three, the summary of the law, that's how I summarized it. And they said the only thing now left is this one of employers to identify employees who might be homosexuals.
So why did he sign with that clause?
He said he had not read it. He said he hadn't read that clause. And then he said the requirement of landlords to also identify. He said that one is unimplementable. So he said those two, they need to handle them. So after he gave that speech, I was convinced.
That was after he had signed.
Yes, after he had signed. So I was convinced that from the perspective of accessing medical services, they are going to be accessing medical services. I would say if you're homosexual, don't fear. Ugandan doctors will serve you willingly.
Thank you. Fantastic. Council, I want to get back to you. And, Parliament is supposed to make laws for the proper governance of the people of Uganda. And if we are to go by doctors' facts here, is that
not facts.
Oh, okay.
I interpreted the facts.
Guidance.
And contextualized them.
Medical perspective.
Yes,
medical perspective.
If you are to go by doctors' medical perspective, is that over 90% of Ugandans are, in fact, homophobic. They don't think that homosexuals should be part of us. But also, if you look at the debate in Parliament, there was consensus from almost across the divide. Even the Honorable Fox Odoi's minority report really was not really debated as much. So it appears like there is consensus from Ugandans.
How would the minority report be debated by the speaker who has said that we shall see who is for us against us? The climate in which that law was passed was not.
There was no neutrality and
it was mob violence on the floor of Parliament, midwifed by the speaker. Yes, there was hostility.
But then what bars lawmakers from being emotional as they discuss a given bill or law?
They can have feelings, but they can't afford it to be illogical. They cannot afford to be a mob. They are legislators. They are supposed to be not the worst of the population, but the best in representing us. They are expected to have a minimum threshold of civility, of knowledge, of even psychology of understanding that if it's a law, it must be discussed. And the conditions for discussion must be ripe. And this is only a house. I mean, I know there are too many, but there are still only one house representing about almost 50 million Ugandans. They need to take care of not just 49, even if we are going to say 49 million out of 50, even 1 million. It's not majoritarian that is synonymous with democracy. Democracy caters even for the minority. You don't just go into parliament to legislate for the biggest number of people and say that, can you say that now we should kill minority? Because if you deny them means to earn a living, haven't you killed them? If they can't. So it is, as an MP, you have to be sober. Not by choice, but by obligation. You need to listen to the other side. But if we have a speaker warning, intimidating people, members of parliament, clearly telling them even how to vote, intimidating an attorney general, a deputy attorney general.
Stop you. You will never represent any role.
Banning him from the house in the most emotional fashion. There was no debate. Let's not even say it was rushed. There was no debate of this law. It was just roughshod, driven into parliament. But
is it the only law where there's consensus?
Even if there's a consensus, even if there's one MP, you should listen to him.
Yes.
You get me? You should listen to him. Even if there was one MP in support, you should listen to that population that is opposed to the law. But most importantly, you cannot legislate people out of existence. You're just saying there must be no homosexuals in Uganda. So where should they go? Are you going to export Ugandan homosexuals to Kenya, to Rwanda, There is a problem with that. So minority rights are also important. You cannot, and people are giving wrong things saying that this is a Western import. No. What is a Western import is homophobic legislation, starting with the penal code. That's a British import. Ugandans didn't have this thing here. The sexual issues they had a problem with, they would take you to a cliff and put you there. And you know, such a thing as simple as premarital pregnancy, even it shows you that even society can be wrong. But if you do some good research, you find we had homosexual kings here, homosexual princes. Homosexuality, even Museveni himself is on record of saying it has always been here, but people were not prostituted or persecuted. Museveni knows these things. He knows the truth. I want to also almost get some confidence that because Museveni knows the facts about homosexuality, that you cannot cure them, you cannot, he is doing it for political expedience. And for me, that's my problem with him. But also, as a Machiavellian man, Museveni knows that he must play the politics while also looks for a way of accommodating them. If the guidance, he can support guidance that ignore his own law, being the Machiavellian that he is. So the idea that the homosexuality is a Western import is wrong. Even there is medical science to the effect that there has always been a viability in human sexuality in every society. They are few, but they are there in all human societies. So in Africa, it has been there. The way Africans, I think, mostly treated it was to ignore it. They would sometimes use the derogatory language as a vigilante. But differently, again, Africa is not homogeneous. But there was no documented case of killing homosexuals in 80 years, African traditional society. The biggest problem with homosexuality was amplified by colonial legislation. Colonialists, remember at that time, who have now since become progressive, were very homophobic. In fact,
Christian fundamentalists.
Yes, they were very Christian fundamentalists. And Christian fundamentalists have reduced the number, but in America, where they still have the numbers like Florida, you'll have trouble. I mean, I think this one of the presidential candidates for the Republicans is still homophobic. One or all of them, because Trump is a homophobe, DeSantis, his main rival, is a homophobe. So even in the Western society, it's not that all of them are getting it right. There are people who get it wrong in every society, but we shouldn't copy the worst. In Uganda, we need to copy the best. We have signed up to democracy. Democracy means that we must tolerate people we disagree with. That I disagree with you, but I will defend to death your right to speak your mind, and also your right to exist. I don't know what the other question was, but I just wanted to disabuse the people of the notion.
Just a follow-up question is that, and perhaps no, I think I'll shift this to Doctor. Doctor, we have outlawed incest here in Uganda. You cannot marry your family member, and you know the Bruno Chihuahua case, you know. So if we have outlawed sexual practices like incest before, then what is wrong with us outlawing homosexuals?
I'm not sure we have outlawed it.
Incest,
but I'm not sure we have outlawed it.
I
am not
we
aware.
have people here in Uganda who marry their cousins.
Even from first family. That's not.
Those ones do it. But what does the law say?
No. There is.
What is the
I'm
portion
saying
of the law?
There was a case, and maybe how it came in. A parent came in and stopped, I think, cousins
Bruno
under
Yes.
the Uganda
Yes.
culture. You
Yes.
get me?
Yeah.
So it's a cultural thing, not a statutory thing. There is no statute.
No, it's incest
penal
on
code.
the law books, penal code. It's outlawed, but it
Yes,
still goes on.
It is outlawed.
It is
Oh,
still,
yes,
it's
code,
still,
yes.
yeah, but
It is
it is
outlawed.
still
It's a
practiced.
crime.
Yeah. So my point is, if you can outlaw incest, then what is wrong with us outlawing homosexuality?
I think for me the difference with homosexuality, and in my life before, because me I'm a rural
But
girl.
incest is not a sexual orientation.
Yes, that's where I was coming. I'm a rural girl.
It is.
No. Let me come. I'm a rural girl. So before
Incest
I
people can
migrated,
be heterosexual or homosexual. incest is not a
It's
sexual
not the
orientation.
same. So I have before I came to Kampala and the confusion of urban life, I met one naturally homosexual person in the rural area. It has nothing to do with everybody knew he was born like that. People say Ogwenechitingwa. He's there. He has no interest in men. He didn't have any known relations. He has no interest in women. No known sexual relations. Living on his own. Because maybe he didn't identify a partner. So, how do you criminalize such a person? What crime has he committed? He was born like that. He was known by everybody like that. Ogwenechitingwa. Meaning his sexual orientation is different from the common no sexual orientation. What danger did he pose to society, first of all? Two, what crime did he commit?
Was he homosexual or he was celibate?
I don't.
Is there a difference?
These are now the medical.
Celibate is called the chifera, or like someone who can't perform.
Because
isn't it?
my thinking is that homosexual is the one who is active
Yeah.
and engages in
So who is a chitingwa?
same-sex
Who is a chitingwa? Who is
intercourse,
a
isn't it? No, I don't know it. I was just thinking through what.
Okay,
you were
but
saying.
these are
Yes.
now
No,
details.
homosexual is actually a chitingwa, but what he was asking, celibate might be more of a chifera. But there are those who have no interest in women, not because they are homosexual, but because they cannot perform.
No,
Not necessarily because they
his
cannot
issue
perform.
was different. He would even behave like a woman. His issue was different. I think it wasn't about
Perhaps
being
that's the
impotent.
one where as you were suggesting.
Yes, I don't think
need to
that he
revise
was
my-
just impotent. He was completely different.
Recently, I was dealing with a lady who was telling me, a family was telling me about their sibling, a young man who is, for him, he dresses in female. If he puts on a pant, it must be tight. The way you see ladies dress, that's how the young man dresses. And I'm saying, let the person be.
We had another guy in Beranyanji, completely male, except for the sexual organ. The hair, the walking, the posture. You would be like, how is the boy going into all them trees? All the physical features were male, except the organ.
I have a friend, he called me very recently.
So what do you do to these people?
He speaks like a woman. He dresses almost like a woman. They said you are speaking to her. They said, no, it's a friend. Let me put him on. I'll speak
Yes.
again. I said, how
So
is it?
what do you do? Two, what danger do they pose?
None.
What crime have they committed?
I mean, those
And
who
they are not
attempting-
angels, to be clear, they are
I
not
think
angels.
Section
But the
8.
crimes they commit are crimes of even heterosexuals.
Yes.
If it
Which
is
are there
rape,
for, if
exactly.
they are therefore covered in existence.
Covered,
So
yes.
if we were to have an issue, the issue would be on recruitment.
Yes.
Because if somebody
Section
prefers
8.
that orientation, let them prefer it naturally. Why do you have to educate it to other
So
people?
are you in
That
agreement?
one, everybody would have a problem,
Are you
really.
therefore in agreement with Mr. Museveni? Because
No,
that's what you were saying.
on that point.
You are saying if you are there promoting and
No,
recruiting,
on that point,
should
on that point, doctor,
the law should
everybody agrees really. If it is your orientation, it's your thing. What business do you have spreading it? But then, what crime does it?
someone may argue and say, freedom of association.
No.
So that they form the homosexuals club
I think,
of Uganda.
I think
and-
Sarah is not saying that
No,
someone
I'm
shouldn't
talking
hit
about
on you.
recruitment.
To be clear, if a homosexual hits on me, that's not a crime or should not be criminalized.
You just
The
tell them
problem,
that you are.
I know I'm sorry, but I'm straight. So
Hey.
and we move on.
Guy can tap your cabina.
I've experienced that.
Sexual
No, but even
harassment.
if it is a lady who taps my cabin and I don't like her, it's not a nice feeling by the way.
Yeah,
No,
even,
sexual
even,
harassment,
yeah,
yes.
even it's sexual harassment. Even if it's a man or woman, it's nasty when you have nothing to do with the person. It's a nasty thing. But so the questions we would ask is, these people, I've seen 2 people in my district. 2. What crime, what danger did they pose to society? So if there is danger, and I was looking at the statistics provided, 96% are homophobic. Are we saying that the 4% are the ones turning everything upside down against the 96?
And you know, homophobic, it means hate.
Yes.
They are hostile. Are we
Yes.
legislating hostility?
Yes. So we have 96% who say, don't get near me, it's disgusting.
No, the question 27 of that survey, that's not what was
No,
asked.
no.
It was just a question of would you accept? It was actually a polite question.
Like tolerance.
Would you accept?
Okay, so we have 96%.
I have
You
heard
don't
people
tolerate.
taking the debate towards the, recently we had the Twitter spaces and hate, I think also those who are fighting for the freedoms of which I agree with, humans are born free, should also not take it to, not everyone who said, for example, to that survey, really, they
Of course, some are not. Of course, some are not.
They ask you, say no, but
some do not hate necessarily. So we have 96 who say no, 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 no. So what danger? And out of the 4, you might find 1% are gay. Not that the 4 who
said
no
tolerate,
are gay. So what danger does it pose society? And where should we invest our energies as a country? For me, I also find this. What are our priorities as a nation? Are our priorities really to spend 4 months taxpayers' money chasing 1%?
That's a good question. Doctor, as we take a short commercial break, let's shift towards the implications of this particular, and perhaps the geopolitical implications, to be precise. Because if you have countries like the USA threatening to withdraw their funding, more so to the health sector, so are we beginning to experience the ramifications of this?
Of course, I have seen writings from the biggest funder for, I think, HIV, TB, and malaria, the American government, where they were raising concern around what's called the PEPFAR, Bush's PEPFAR, Presidential Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. It's a big kitty going to so many African countries in billions of dollars to save lives. Actually, George Bush called it an act of mercy. And as a practitioner, my area of interest or expertise was HIV AIDS, and I've moved around programs. There is nothing that has been more impactful in the whole of American history or the history of AIDS like free HIV treatment in Africa. I've seen people come from skeleton to obese.
Yes.
And they are still alive today. I was prescribing in the early 2000s.
Is the whole program donor funded?
Most of it, yes.
Can
of course,
we afford?
Government of Uganda is giving a hand. Let me also say this. Even in Dabisia Moyo wrote a book. She's a scholar from Zambia, and wrote a book called Dead Aid. Yeah, showing how Africa is actually the one aiding the other countries. These are low prices for coffee and other raw materials. But she recognized, she underscored and said, but when it comes to HIV treatment, it's something that has been a plus in the African economy. If we argue that human capital is a necessary ingredient and important for the economy. So that letter has raised concern. But I'm persuaded because of two things. One, the commitment of medical doctors who run these programs, all the way from White House to Department of Human Health and Services, to CDC, to USAID, and in Uganda, the Minister of Health is a doctor. Will work around the clock to ensure that these services are sustained. Two, Minister of Health already issued guidelines barring health workers from discriminating against homosexuals. Three, there are existing programs identifying key populations. But finally, there's this thing called Global War on Terror, which is Museveni's joker. In this region, if you read the papers, the literature around Global War on Terror, Museveni is a key player, stabilizing all this Great Lakes region, including Somalia. And to me, he's taken very seriously. And therefore, I don't see the powers that be, the US government and so on, just pulling that rug from the aid that they get. I think this is something which I give it a sunset of 6 months from now. And it should be resolved. Very likely the law will again go back to the 2013 scenario where it was packed and quiet until someone again became clever after several years.
Well, for us here, our sunset break is not as long as 6 months. It is just a very short break. Let's take that break and see you after this as we continue.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. Council, could there be more than meets the eye? I will just try to attempt to build a conspiracy around something here, which is that the UPDF base in Somalia is attacked by Al-Shabaab. A few days later, the president, in his statement, is accusing or faulting the USA for not offering enough support to the UPDF base in Somalia. The following day, the president signs the bill, and then, we see the reaction from the USA. Could there be more than meets the eye? And could we be reacting towards something bigger?
Well,
because ideally, Parliament passed this law some time back. What took the president all this while to sign it into law?
no, the president didn't take a while. He has signed it in record time. There are laws that take forever for him to sign. So I think for me, there is nothing much in
So
the
there is
space.
no correlation?
In the space. But if you're talking about the president's rhetoric and the Americans, as the good doctor has already said, the Machiavellian president is also a very astute politician, not in a good way, but in a very effective way. And he will try to balance the global powers. Remember, there is a Ukraine war. When you get into terror, into America, there is also that Ukraine side. And our president, alongside the South African president, a total of 6 presidents, are mooting the idea of going to do peace talks because South Africa thinks it is non-aligned, so does Uganda, and so on and so forth. Whether they are actually non-aligned is a different matter, but they are trying to mediate. The thing that the US is not giving enough support, I don't buy it, because even the support the US is giving, some of it is not all of it is reaching. Even today, I had a call from someone just from Somalia, military person. They are complaining about how much they are supposed to get under some official rules or official policy, and how much they actually gets into the pockets of the soldiers, Ugandan citizen soldiers on the front line. So geopolitics will always be there. This law touches a group that is, it touches human rights of a certain sexual minority. And the human rights, the UN family basically is up in arms. The EU is up in arms. There's a flurry from the US, at least the liberal West is completely at war with this kind of legislation, because it is perceived as homophobic. And there are many people who are living in Uganda who are homosexuals or who project themselves as homosexuals, and they are going into exile, And on the good side, the doors are opening for them. But on the other hand, we don't need to be losing our talent just because it has a different sexual orientation from us. We don't need to lose talent, taxpayers, neighbors, friends, just because of their sexual orientation to exile, because exile is bad. I think Joseph was here the other time. He told you, exile is not a piece of cake. People should stop romanticizing exile. So no leader should drive his citizens into exile, because that's it's criminal, not in a legal criminal, but it's heinous to drive your own citizen into exile because of irresponsible laws on the altar of political expediency and political populism. So this law helps Museveni, unfortunately, not just politically, because it is a popular, problematic as it is popular, but also it gives him now a fresh negotiating stance.
Relevance.
Table. Yes. Now, no phone calls are coming in from Blinken, from everyone that matters in the West has to call Museveni and think even how to phrase their words to urge him to proceed very carefully.
The big man.
Yes,
the
the
region.
big man, to ensure that he gets a solution to this problem. Part of it he has already given us, but there must be a solution, and unfortunately it must come from Museveni, because now he has this trump card. He is the one, the final authority in the land. He knows he can get even a judgment against the law or for the law. So it makes him more relevant, politically stronger, but it is an unfortunate thing. It is just it's Machiavellian. It's the end justifies the means. It is might is right. It is all things bad, but bad for ordinary people, very good for Museveni.
Fair enough. Doctor, I don't know. The USA, in their practices, they don't encourage polygamy. And you cannot procure a polygamous marriage in the USA.
Even Muslims.
I am not sure about that. But what I know is you cannot procure a legal polygamous marriage. So the question is, countries like the USA, are they trying to do sort of an agenda setting? Because you'd ask yourself, what exactly do they benefit from enforcing what they believe in their view is right? Because if we as Africans feel like this practice does it work for us, why should they try to cajole us into?
Is Sarah Chinese? I have a problem with your question.
Yeah.
Even me, but I was coming. Your problem, your question is problematic, and I want to put it this way. America is a liberal democracy. They have their standards. The money they use in donations, grants, and loans is money from their taxpayers. And they have standards and values. You must have heard the rhetoric of several MPs and the president say, these are our values, these are our culture. And the same way you are bringing polygamy is a cultural thing. So even as we claim, we have our values.
Yeah.
But also, we have adopted elements of liberal democracy. Like I've told you before, at the beginning, the law is being put to the standard of our constitution. It's not being put to the standard of the American constitution. So whose values do we have in the Ugandan constitution that we refer to as foreign? Do we? Are the values in our constitution Ugandan or American?
And I think we can change those values.
No, but as they are today, are they Ugandan?
Well,
Yes.
that is
No,
subject.
Why are you
Subject to
avoiding?
discussion.
No.
Subject to
So the values we put in our constitution, are they American? Are they European? Why do we conveniently refer to them as foreign? We are talking about the constitution of the Republic of Uganda.
I think Article 43 of the Constitution gives the state powers to limit some of those rights. So
Discrimination
the
is...
state is in fact acting within the law.
So are you saying the state has power to discriminate?
No, to limit certain rights for
So-
as long as the state has consensus that some of these rights, I mean, your right to
Okay, but I
your
think
right
I've
to-
demystified your level of why is America concerned. The people petitioning our constitutional court are not Americans. They are Ugandans.
Are they not?
They
Someone
are
may ask, are they
Ugandans.
not funded by Americans?
I don't know.
Are they-
I'm
are
not
they-
part
are
of
they-
them, but I've gone to the constitution several times. I've not seen who is funding me. So before we brand our own things foreign, let's first ask who is disagreeing with who. Among the petitioners is our immediate former ambassador in South Africa. He's not American. So let's say that you, and I've also asserted here that I think the law, of course I can't confirm that it's unconstitutional, but I believe it's unconstitutional. We are just waiting for pronouncements of court. The constitution we are judging it against is Ugandan. The values that we set for ourselves. If you look at the preamble of the constitution, the last sentence, we therefore bestow upon ourselves
Doctor,
and our posterity.
the same constitution gives Ugandans the right to culture.
No.
If
Let's not read.
Ugandans in their exercise of their rights to culture think that this culture is not meant for us.
But I want to come into the pronouncements of the American embassy. So when governments are engaged in diplomatic relations, they do it on behalf of their citizens. And in developed democracies, citizenship is very important. It is not like us here when we are treated as subjects. So when the citizens in Europe and America say we shall only partner with those countries of shared values, that is their condition in their country. So when values are not shared, then they don't partner with you. And it's their right. And that is my response to you.
Okay, fair enough. Doctor,
Yes.
as we try to examine the implications of this law, is that the funding of our health sector, generally speaking, has largely been supported by UK aid, US aid, and all these things. Where are we headed? Is it possible for our economy to be self-sustaining? That should the worst case happen and these donors withdraw, can we become more frugal as a country? Can we manage our little resources and still support the health sector?
Yes, that's a very important question. But I wanted to first address something here.
Yes.
Again, back to the reality check. Is it legal? Is it legitimate?
Yes.
Legally speaking, the constitution is supreme. But on
And
this
it's the
question,
standard. It's the
and
standard.
the court can rule
Yeah.
in that favor, which is legal and it will be
Actually,
there.
Article, sorry, Doctor, the law I was looking for is Article 37, the right to enjoy culture. So
Yes, but that culture must be subject to supremacy. Must be in conformity with the Constitution. That is the standard.
Yeah. Clarity
So
taken.
basically,
Yeah.
there are internal contradictions even in the Constitution, just like the Bible. So it must be read
As a whole.
As a whole.
as a
Yes.
whole. But culture is dynamic, and as I was saying, is it legal? Is it a legal question or is it a legitimate question?
Legitimate.
My thinking is that this is a question of legitimacy. But the answer that the court is going to give
It's illegal.
is a legal one. You see, from the perspective of policy sciences, we respect research a lot. And research has shown that there is a link between the gross income of a country or productivity and the acceptance or rejection of homosexuality. The wealthier countries generally accept homosexuality.
Liberal.
Generally.
Yeah.
The less wealthy countries or the poorer countries or the developing economies vehemently reject it. And the magic figure seems to be around $10,000 gross income per annum. Uganda, the other time the president was very happy to announce in one of his famous speeches in Kololo that we have reached middle income at
Wait.
1,050.
He tried to smuggle.
And and we are saying, according to this study, it's an ecological study, so it's subject to bias, something called ecological bias.
So we still
Is
have
that we still have 9,000 catch up to have, according to this study, to have, and it's a weak study because it's weak link really, because it's a correlation of 0.71. You get what I mean? So even in America where they had 59K, 40% of them are saying no.
The conservatives.
They're saying no, homosexuality is. So when you tell me what is the direction, in as far as Ugandans accepting homosexuality, it is going to be another 50 years. In other words,
more.
Yeah, at least 50 years. In other words, we will conquer AIDS because the target of conquering AIDS is 2030, Agenda 2030. By 2030, AIDS should no longer be a public health concern. So AIDS is going to get over, perhaps even malaria. Then homosexuality can also be forgotten as perhaps people become more liberal. And I think the younger generation may accept it more, except where they are very religious. As I was coming here, I came across I was having a meal, and there were some youngsters. They said, oh, they had me listening to some clips. I asked them, what do you think about homosexuality? And they said, why should it even be debated? It is wrong from the Bible. So, I mean, that's the perspective of teenagers, right? But coming to your question of funding, as I said again, if I were a doctor in a clinic and a clinician who has never been to a political science class and has no interest in the environment, I would say I would panic that my salary is not going to come. But ever since I sat in a political science class to understand, in my PhD, to understand how the world works, how decisions are made, how interests, ideas, and institutions come into play, I'm very confident that the funding environment is going to prevail. Because the people who are there are rational and understand these things. They're already engaging in negotiations. And the law may be sustained, but, worst case scenario, but it may not be implemented.
But
So
also, the president has said it should be amended. Take care of World Bank concerns.
Already. So you can begin to see the negotiation taking root. Because the president also posed the question to the honorable MPs.
After signing.
Yes,
he said that yesterday. That the World Bank concerns should be addressed.
Should be addressed. The woman who called me from the World Bank had 2 questions. Now, before that, he tasked the MPs. He said, you MPs, are you ready to sacrifice, which is where you are taking us? Sacrifice to the extent that the perks of an MP
can be reduced.
Is a toll on the national basket. Yeah. He's well aware that if we approach it in a way that is very fundamentalist, the Americans can easily withdraw, worst case scenario. But I would advise, if I were a senior technical advisor for the American Foreign Affairs, or what do they call it? Department of State, because that's where
Senate relations.
So their foreign policy, I would advise them not to, because when these studies have shown when you withdraw aid for social services, those who suffer are the ones you are trying to protect. So it's no longer wise, according to research, it's no longer wise to drastically withdraw money from social services, but also to perhaps you may see the government of America rechanneling its resources and Britain and other development partners through implementing partners who are non-state actors. So much so that the state is constrained in terms of accessing those resources, because again, research has shown that when governments in these developing countries are given this money, they are not accountable to the people, as opposed to when they tax the people and the people can demand from their taxes. When they get aid, they can misuse it, while the accountability is only to the ones who give them aid. The last question which I would like to answer is, can Uganda sustain its health budget? The answer is yes.
That's the one I like most.
The answer is yes. Why? We are already spending the money anyway. Either you go to a traditional healer because the health system has failed you, okay? Or you reach the health system and you have to pay because of scarcity. What is the consequence of cutting these budgets? If you cut the health sector budget, what do you expect? More medicine? More doctors on the ground when interns are not being recruited? What do you expect? We expect scarcity of health, goods, and services. Okay? But what do Ugandans do? They have always bought. You will go to the national referral, yeah? For every 3 visits, at least 2, you will find scarcity of something. Isn't it? And you have to buy.
So
At
what
one
do you
point,
mean that we can afford?
let me come back and tell you how we afford. You at one point, the management of Mulago found it wise to actually open pharmacies within private pharmacies within the entities, which was a report card to show that the government was not able to sustain with its financing model. And that is the tax-based financing model. Now, how can we afford to pull all these resources together and do what we call strategic purchasing, taking advantage of economies of scale, bigger numbers pulling their risks and resources together through a national health insurance scheme, which His Excellency the President has delayed since 1987, the Professor Worry report. It's now almost coming to 40 years when we have been talking about insurance. I'll give examples. Countries like Thailand started their health insurance about 1980. By the year 2000, health insurance was the one winning the contesting parties' elections. What are you promising?
But
You see what I mean?
let me ask Doctor. We have 39% of our population outside the money economy and more people employed in the informal sector. With even the latest report showing that 45.3% of employed people in the formal sector earn 200,000 and below. So how will the 39 out of money economy, the people in the informal sector, get into the health insurance scheme?
Let me start by saying, that's a very good question. How do you design a scheme that will take care of all those segments? It's what we call a mixed financing model, where there is a tax-based financing which government gives, and this money which is given under the table can be organized to strategically purchase health cheaply. Because right now it's
make
expensive.
it accessible to everyone.
Yes. It can be segmented. Community health insurance to the rural areas. Informal health insurance to the Chikovo people. Those of us who are working for government, we get it as well. Those of us in the private sector, we say now UAP, AIG and so on, take care of those. But make sure everybody has that safety net. That is a government decision that must be made. Same for food, same for education. COVID showed us however rich you are. You know, at that point, people had oxygen hunger. Even if you had $1 million, the oxygen just wasn't there.
Yeah.
You are getting it. So you are better off. You know, one time we were in a room debating this health insurance, and one of the big MDs, we were actually in the State House, said, me, how can I pay my money for someone in the I've worked hard. Why are they lazy? But COVID showed us that even if you've worked hard and saved $2 million, you are better off to have invested in that national scheme to guarantee that oxygen is there when you want it or when you need it. Actually, it wasn't wanting. It was needed.
Yeah.
We were so desperate
I know.
that just the oxygen regulator, which we used to buy in less than 100,000, it became 750,000. Even the oxygen is very cheap, 35,000. The cylinder cheap, but getting the regulator. You're seeing how economics can make your $1 million become useless.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is yes. If Mr. Museveni stood up tomorrow and said, look, we have decided that we are going to tighten our belts. MPs, please, we are having your salary. There will be a strike in parliament, of course. And then, you know, we are putting this money in health, education, and food security. How is it that Cuba is having a life expectancy at birth higher than the United States, with this economy they are saying is failing in Cuba? And USA has the this economy which is living on a credit card. In fact, they are debating whether they should borrow more.
Yeah.
Okay? From China and all these other countries who say they are
the
saving.
debt ceiling.
You're getting me? They have a higher life expectancy in Cuba, which has been under embargo.
Yeah, because of
Why?
their medical.
Because of the decision taken by the revolutionary leaders to prioritize education,
Yeah, social
Health?
services.
and food. That is, Uganda and other countries in Africa have been sending doctors to be trained in Cuba. In any case, finally, during the strike of the doctors, the president actually called on Cuba. He didn't say American doctors, come and help me. He said, we are going to bring Cuba doctors. So that model can be replicated to some extent in Uganda. And maybe finally, all these programs which are supported by donor agencies always talk about sustainability. Isn't it? How can we slowly withdraw so that the government can increasingly take up its role? A government which cannot take care of the health of its people, the food of its people, the education and security is called a fragile state. I know you are lawyers, isn't it? So how can we make Uganda less fragile and more stable? This is the interest of the donors. So even outside the act of threatening to withdraw, it is a plan that by a certain time, when we are perhaps achieving Vision 2040, we shouldn't be in ICU when it comes to the health sector. Thank you.
Fantastic. Doctor, I will give you a chance to make your opinion regarding the economic implications of this particular law now, but also does this law set a massive momentum for President Museveni's 2026 bid? Does it give him more? I mean, we have all said...
I want to raise two issues in line with 2026 and going forward. But before I get to that, building on Dr. Buku's point of sustainability, you can only achieve that with a fiscal discipline.
Fiscal, yes.
I was hoping that, or my hope is that if the Constitutional Court maintains this law, and if we are serious about the sovereignty rhetoric that we are parading around, then this will spark a revolution for Mr. Museveni to cut into half his government, his bloated government that wastes taxpayers' money. Let's have half of that cabinet. Let's merge back the districts. Let's cut parliament by half. Because also parliament was riding on that. We are a sovereign country. A sovereign country that cannot pick its bills is really nothing.
It's a fragile state.
Yes. So let's move and put that rhetoric into practice. Cut down the size of parliament, cut down the size of cabinet, put back the districts by half, and pick our bills so that we make our government sustainable and have a balance of money to do service delivery. That's when I would consider our political leadership serious. In the absence of that, it's just political drama to me.
By the way, just to chip in, you saw that clip where the speaker was saying, let us support interns, let us make sure they are budgeted for, let us do all
But
these
did
things.
they put the
But
money?
in reality, we saw the money in the speaker's office increasing.
Yes.
I was just reading the tweet. The deputy speaker is in the billions. These are just two offices. Between them,
Travel,
perhaps
clothes,
having 20 billion,
fuel,
which
billions
is
of
$4
money.
million. I don't wish them bad. I want the speaker to be smart, to be able to buy Range Rovers.
But
on
her
birthdays
salary is enough
and
to
so
buy
on.
clothes.
I wish them that. But in the context
Not at
of
the expense of
in the context of interns,
we need to
having enough
move
food.
from rhetoric to seriousness on sovereignty. Otherwise, they should take away their political drama.
But you must know that president is good at rhetoric, not substance.
So that's why we shall call them to account. Not to treat citizens with this drama, hoodwinking people on propaganda. In one statement, you're saying, I am a sovereign state. In the other statement, America wants my people to die. Then what kind of leader are you? If you are vulnerable to that extent, that you cannot treat your own citizen, then why are you creating drama? Why?
Maybe that's how
that kind of posturing in our politics, we need to bring it to an end. You wanted to say something?
He
I
did.
think
He did.
you have said it. Museveni, if it means posturing as a socialist, he will posture as one. If it means posturing as even a saint, as an evangelical, he will posture as one. He's very good at rhetoric. Yeah, but he's never serious about things like patriotism, like sovereignty. For him, patriotism means supporting him to rule for life. Sovereignty means not criticizing him if you are not a Ugandan. That's
Yes.
all what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very
He
unfortunate.
wants just to have his
So
way.
I was expecting in these addresses you've been making with these rhetorics, a serious leader should have said, we have taken a stand as a country.
And we are calling back the budget.
And I have instructed, because the president is a substantial minister of finance,
Finance, yes.
I have instructed Mr. Kasaija to make the following changes and make available the 1 billion US PEPFAR funds. So I have alternatives. I want to engage with partners on an equal footing. If they think they cannot deal with us, then we are ready to move on. That's the kind of leadership I expect.
4
But
trillion.
we have a 52.7 trillion budget with almost nothing, no money for interns and doctors.
And it's just 80 billion.
Half of it is luxury, half of it is wastage. Then in the same address, I would expect him to say that I'm going to announce a cabinet reshuffle with half, not 82 stadium cabinet, that they do nothing to the extent that they are idle still iron sheets. Then I would also say I have a proposal to cut down the size of parliament by 2026. That is now a serious sovereignty agenda that you can market to the
Dr.
people.
Birete, even if we don't do those drastic changes, if you read the IGG's report, where she estimates that 9 trillion is lost,
10.
if we can recover just 30% of that, we can sort out
We
the
can,
1 billion of
for
PEPFAR.
HIV.
I believe
Yes.
that if our senior colleague and friend, Dr. Govi, sits down, and I'm sure he's trying to do it, because you can see now they are doing head count. Because in the districts,
But they've done that before even.
I hear in the
not
districts,
in
for
your-
instance, you find the clinical officers. I was seeing Spire Sentongo's exhibition, clinical officers who passed interviews. They were not aware, but someone has been taking the salary for 4 years, who is not,
Ghosts.
perhaps it's a cow, you get, in charge of the registry. So if we can get some efficiency gains, even outside the anti-homosexuality debate, because this is what should happen anyway, that even without this trigger, can we make our systems more efficient and more reliable so that we go back to the 10-point program of a self-sustaining mixed economy? One of the points I remember is self-sustaining mixed economy. Okay? The question the NRM should perhaps mark itself against is, after 40 years, to what extent have we done that? If let's say it was another law we wanted to make, because this one is very controversial, and someone said, if you make that law, I will remove the bread and butter. To what extent are we able to say, no, I can survive on my? He said, when there is no bread and butter, tulie muogo.
Because
How can we survive
every
on a
Ugandan
muogo?
would want actually that kind of president.
Yes.
Who can say that a foreigner is not dictating economic policy?
Yes,
is
for
not
me.
running. We all want to be independent.
But if you say now,
But
they want
independence is not in rhetoric, it's in action.
action.
And but although, of course, we must understand the tension between sovereignty and globalization, it is no longer tenable to do a Brexit and survive, because the pro-Brexit people are now renegotiating.
No. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yes.
But you say you can, instead of telling citizens, oh, America wants my people to die. Let me tell you, that comment disappointed
He
me.
said that?
Yes, it's a quote in Monitor.
It's
Oh,
quoted, yes.
today-
Yes.
Monitor?
No,
No,
yesterday.
like yesterday.
Yes. Really, that was very disappointing from a leader.
So, Doctor.
So I would have expected somebody to say that I will re-engage my partners. But if it gets to that level of exiting, then we shall rework our budget and pick our bills, even if you don't have details. But America wants my people to die. What kind of leader are you? Why are you a leader?
Doctor, all that notwithstanding, does this particular law, with how it has been received by Ugandans, does it give President Museveni momentum for his presidential bid for the next term.
You see, this law can give short-term political gain. And if, by the way, it stays in the law books, it will be more risky for the populist leaders riding on it because they cannot enforce it. They cannot. 80% of the provisions in that law.
It can boomerang
Yes.
if it stifles our economy. Because while there might be that short-term euphoria supporting
yes.
it,
Political euphoria.
yeah, political euphoria, as we have seen ANC
If it
losing
affects,
majority
yes,
in parliament.
if it affects service
ANC
delivery,
is projected to
Yes,
lose majority
yeah.
in parliament, and it will be forced into a coalition. So for you can do all this if you cannot fix your economy.
Yes.
And the economy has never recovered from COVID.
these things are getting worse and worse for the ordinary people. So if you fail to fix, but also failure to implement. So people are saying, okay, come what may. They think there is a big crisis that needs fixing.
The law will not fix our economy, it will worsen it, and Museveni should answer the economic questions of the day rather than pandering to the politics of the moment.
Yeah, just as we wrap this up, is the aspect of the enforceability of this particular law. I mean, would it be a breach of privacy, for example, if upon
I don't want someone stripping and dressing me to see whether my buttocks are swelling. That one is just clearly a breach of my privacy.
Yes.
Even if
the
I
issue
have
of
been
institutionalized discrimination is serious. The Constitution in Article 21 says non-discrimination because of sex, gender, race. Then what do you do with your Constitution? Which is our standard?
Counsel, as I end with you, how comes we have never challenged Section 145 of the Penal Code Act that speaks about unnatural offenses? You know,
including bestiality and others?
Yes, Section 145. But also, too, is how different is this petition, the Professor Silver Tamale petition? How different is it from the Professor Oloko Nyango and Fox Odoye?
The differences really don't matter much. It is okay even to have 1,000 petitions. They can be consolidated.
Yeah. No, I
the
mean
previous one. That one was challenging the act then, and it succeeded. This is challenging the new act.
You see, you can't rely on an old petition when this act is of 2023. The other one was 20 what? So
2009.
Yeah, every new law needs its own set of legal challenges to be annulled. Otherwise, it stays. But there was the other question you asked before this.
Yes. How comes we have never challenged Section 145 of the Penal Code Act?
First of all, challenging things is not just like me walking into a cafe and I ask for a cup of coffee. It is hours of hard work, instruction fees, organizing which lawyer to do it, which lawyer not to do it, all those of things. It's not like as straightforward doing a constitutional petition. Otherwise, people would be doing them. It's like, how come you don't have a lawyer?
By the way, it was challenged. The Navagesser and 3 others versus Attorney General in 2014. Section 145 of the Penal Code, which prohibits homosexual acts, it was challenged. So that's why I was saying that there are 3 precedents already around homosexuality.
But at least there is still sections which were saved that people are using to charge homosexuals in Uganda, including actually 2 of my running clients at Uganda Road. They are still being changed. So it's not easy. But also there is not a big, it was not a big deal. Because out of, like, it is my first case in my life to defend a homosexual. The one I'm having at Uganda Road. It's not a big deal. It's not a problem. There's a clip that I think it is Kagame when he says that homosexuality is not a problem.
It's not a way.
And I don't want to make it a problem.
A problem.
I think the people making homosexuality a problem are the sponsors of this law. Because Ugandans have lived with homosexuals. There is a homosexual friend who has just fled. He was called Princess something. One time she came to my office And he started doing like this, and I was wondering. Initially, I didn't understand. When we were, I think, representing Stellanians, some of them saw him. I saw a lady. I didn't a man behaving like a lady. So what is this? Eventually, then I realized
that is the Klinefelters I was telling you.
Yes.
All the features, reduced muscles, high pitch voice,
Yeah.
and the testosterone is lower. That's the Klinefelters. And then there's the other one where there's what they call ambiguous genitalia, where there you can't tell whether it's a male or female organ. So those are the biological differences.
And on that thing, I'm told people who are being biased, parents destroy the active part in favor of the part they want someone to be. Says, me, my child, I want her to be a lady.
But forgetting that internally,
he's a man.
Because
I'm told the certainty, the clarity for that kind of ambiguity emerges much later, like maybe above 18, 21. So there's a problem. But the other point that the doctor mentioned that I want to exposure. In 2015, I had a trip to America, but this particular was, I think, in California. There was a police station that was completely manned by homosexuals. A black one, a white, a lady called, a gentleman called Ian, who used to be a very beautiful lady. The ladies on our team were falling for him, only that to realize that she was clear. Like, it was a bit of education. Like, a whole police station was surviving, doing very well, and it was completely manned by homosexuals. So homosexuals are normal human beings, just who are different from us. And sometimes difference can inconvenience us. We can even fear it, but it's not a crime, and we shouldn't hate them.
Okay, your last words finally.
Those are it.
Oh, those are your last words?
Yes.
Yes, doctor, your last words as I move towards.
I think I will borrow the words of Martin Luther King, where he said that the true character of a man is not determined in times of comfort and convenience, but in times of crisis. We have made a populist law in the country, which I think, even if it was left on the law books, would not address even the social and moral needs of the people. But is likely to, drive the country into a more economic crisis, with the leaders thinking that they are being politically smart, not knowing that short-term gains have never delivered any development for a nation. So it's time to see the true character of our leaders, whether even with a little squeeze, they can do away with their luxury and wastage on the part of the president, the part of the speaker. The budgets that have been shared in the public are embarrassing. At the time, you're supposed to act frugal, but now that you've plunged yourselves into a crisis, can you then act frugal? At least to lay a claim to your sovereignty rhetoric.
Very difficult to conclude from the legal and political angle when the gurus have spoken. So I'll take the medical angle. I'll speak to the camera, particularly the medical workers, to encourage them to follow the principles of medicine. That is, my patient shall be my first consideration. Nurses, doctors, clinical officers, midwives, please, in the event that someone is a homosexual and they come to you for services, please handle them with the 4 principles of respect of persons or autonomy. Do no harm, or non-maleficence, beneficence, and justice.
What is beneficence? You have not defined it.
That there should be benefit in the intervention.
Oh, okay.
That they give.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah, and of course, Council, for making the time to be on this week's episode of the Citizens Chat Show. Well, to the viewers and listeners, you've heard it all. Just process it. I just don't want to, dilute whatever has been said. Have a lovely Friday afternoon. See you next week, same time, same place. And for our lovely Christians, enjoy the Matters Day celebrations. Bye-bye.